This is the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 003, Anime Parodies with Bob Beaver. This episode of the Word Slinger Podcast is brought to you by Happy Pants Creative. We connect you to the marketing and creative resources you need to help your business do more business. Get started at happypantscreative.com.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
And those are happy pants optional, actually. Those are very happy pants indeed. Hi, everybody. This is Kevin Tomlinson, and I am the Word Slinger. And, man, I'm really thrilled you guys are here today, because otherwise it's just me sitting in a closet. Think about that. So, this week I got, to me, it's a special treat. I'm going to actually be talking to my good friend Bob Beaver, also sometimes known in anime circles as Seiko, Bobby Seiko Beaver, who, among other things, does these. He's sort of responsible for the creation of a company called CDS Productions, and I call it a company. Largely because he structured it that way. It's not like it makes any profit or anything, but he and some friends years ago started doing these anime parody dubs, and at some point managed to convince me to get involved, and that was interesting. Actually, I credit that with teaching me quite a bit about the world of production. I used a lot of what I learned in those sessions to help build my career. So I'm actually really thrilled about how all that turned out. I'm proud of the work we did. It was funny. We got a little bit of notoriety out of it in some circles, so cannot complain. In fact, the first time I was featured not the first time I was featured in a newspaper, and I had actually written for newspapers, but the first time I was the subject of an actual editorial in a newspaper was because of these parody dubs. So I kind of rode Bob's coattails on that one. So that's the setup. Bob is a character. He's one of my very good friends. He's probably one of my closest friends, and I've known him for years. So I think you'll dig the conversation. And afterwards, hang out. I'll circle up, and anything that I can, I'll link to in show notes. So don't feel like you gotta memorize anything. So that's the introduction. So enjoy this interview with my good friend Bob Beaver. Okay, I'm talking with Bobby Beaver of CDS Productions. He's an old friend of mine, and we've done quite a few projects together. A lot of parody dubs, which is more or less what we're going to talk about today. How you doing, Bob?
Doing great, Kev.
So, you what a
fail.
What a canned response. You and I have known each other. How long have we known each other? We've known each other
for... It's 92?
Way back. I mean, you and I both worked at Radio Shack years ago for Bill David. Yeah, and I think that around that time was when you. I was not interested in anime really at all, but you were doing these anime parody dubs, and taking them to conventions, and you somewhere along the way you got me involved in that. So tell me a little about how you got into that.
Monkey see, monkey do. I saw it and I said I can do that, but only better. So I decided to go for it, and managed to actually get one off the ground, and started from there and went on up.
What was the first one you ever saw?
The first one I ever saw was a very, very terrible one called Ramna 1/3. It was so offensive and gratuitous that it left me agape.
Okay. So, all right. Some people may not actually know what we're talking about here. What exactly is a parody dub?
That's where you take the footage and you lay down a new soundtrack. It's new sound effects, new music, new dialogue. And usually you have to edit the footage to basically the work the way you want it to work. You can't just run the footage straight through.
Yeah. So when we did it, now it seems like it's easier. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but it seems easier than what you and I always did. Which now there's actually software like Toon Boom and things like that will actually sync animation to an audio track. So how did we do it?
Well, you weren't around for the first one, but it was a nightmare. We actually used a 16-track professional recording studio at Alvin Community College, and there was no provision for synchronizing video to audio there. So we drew a line on the tape with a marker, and then we had a certain set of frames at the beginning of the video portion, and we lined the two up and press record on the 16-track, and we play on the video recorder, and just played from the beginning. And we had to just sit around and wait for our lines to show up to time to talk.
And you did that all at once. You didn't. You did it all in one take.
Well, we would have liked to have done that, but there were several miscues and issues, and which meant having to stop, run it all the way to the back at the beginning, and start all over again. And we actually, to make it to be even more frustrating, we had to actually tune the recorder every time we used it. So we had a pitch tone put on the beginning of the reel, and we had to use a guitar tuner plugged into it to tune it.
So what do you mean by tune it?
There's a pitch control on the deck that you had to turn. And we needed to make sure that it was exactly right. Otherwise, the video and audio would drift apart.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It was probably the most complicated dub ever done at the time, or ever, I would dare say.
Is that how everyone else was doing it? I mean,
no. The usual method was just to use a VCR with audio dub and plug it straight into the microphone into the recorder, hit audio dub, and just run it nonstop, and just everybody just says whatever they're supposed to say.
Yeah.
Primitive, poor quality, music hit or miss, sound effects or whatever somebody could vocalize at the time, most of the time. It just, the qualities was not there.
Yeah.
And I wanted basically to make a parody dub that you could listen to with headphones and not be, audibly assaulted by bad quality.
Right.
And it came out very good. Actually, we got an A on the project, or at least my associate Chris Hall was the one who his grade was at stake based on the quality of our product. So definitely, everybody went above and beyond. I was real pleased with the results.
So what got you to start doing that for conventions?
Well, it was a natural. We had already done music video competitions and done very well. We actually won multiple awards for the music videos, and this was just a natural evolution for us to go from music videos, which were getting old, to the new frontier of parody dubs.
So how does this work? I mean, this is about story, right? And this is just another form of storytelling. And so how does it work from the start? Like, what you've got an idea, and
actually, a lot of times we don't even have an idea. We just say, okay, we're going to just pull a laser disc out of this box, and we're going to make a parody dub about it. Here it is. So let's just play the footage, and we'll just say whatever comes to mind. Everybody does that. And we actually recorded multiple channels, so I could go back later and listen to what everybody said, and that would form the basis of the skeletal script. Yeah. And then we build upon that.
And I know that by the time I got involved, we would have these sort of brainstorming sessions, and everybody's sitting around, and we're all hyped up on soda and pizza and whatever.
Cheez-Its.
And I remember those as being that was the most fun part for me. I think I'd rather do that than any of the other stuff, honestly. But that was the most fun part, is sitting around and coming up with one-liners and scenarios. And then it came down to finding the footage. So you have a secret weapon when it comes to finding the footage, actually, don't you?
Basically, that would be me.
Well, okay, all right, yeah. I was thinking of another individual who seems to be having encyclopedic knowledge of anime.
Yes, we have Bill.
Yeah.
Bill is like a high-end multiple quad core processor, but with no operating system. It's an extremely brilliant piece of hardware, but it will not do anything unless you specifically tell it to do something.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
I think,
lack of motivation there.
yeah, I think we utilized him pretty well though.
Yes, he comes in handy. It's like, I need something. I send him the request. He comes back immediately with an answer.
Yeah, yeah. So what was the first parody dub you and I worked on?
The first one you and I worked on was Kokowa Taku, and you actually showed up conveniently enough to be written into the script.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
was not
okay,
originally part of this group.
that's right. Yeah, it was basically a fish out of water type story, and I needed a character that we would basically kidnap, for lack of better words, force into fandom to do our bidding to make the project. That was what the parody dub was about. And so basically just took miscellaneous character, scratched that out and wrote in Kevin and,
All
and
right.
went from there.
I've been upgraded.
That's right. You've been upgraded from miscellaneous character.
So walk me through it. I mean, as a storytelling medium, I mean, how's this? If someone wants to get into this today, what do they have to look forward to? Where would they start?
Well, it's parody dub has to be funny, but the funniest parody dub is one that circles around a central theme. Our last parody, which was Pretty Sue Me, was about illegal downloading from the internet.
Yeah.
So we generally wrote all the jokes around illegal downloading, musicians, the RIAA being involved and wanting to sue everybody. It was a real good central theme to build from that's branched off in multiple directions. And the amount of jokes you can make involving, musical downloading is tremendous. And I don't even think we hit all the points we wanted to make.
Yeah, I don't think we did actually. I think there was a lot left on the table by the time we walked away.
I agree. And, we actually had phenomenal response in the showings, and they're still showing it today, even though it's 10 years now.
Yeah, yeah. That's been a while, man.
It has been quite a while.
Hard to believe. I mean, okay. So speaking of suing, what?
I know where you're going.
How do you protect yourself from lawsuits? I mean, what is this illegal?
Protection? Me? No. In the strictest sense, it's not legal. However, it's not in the American company's interest to go suing individuals simply for making a parody dub. Mm-hmm. You do have some fair use that falls into play there, but it's just not good press for the company for them to go out and say, hey, I want you to stop doing this.
Yeah.
And there was actually a group who did a parody dub of Urusei Yatsura, which was released in this country under Animigo, which was headed by Robert J. Woodhead. Well, he actually witnessed a parody dub of his Urusei Yatsura being played by a group called Sherbert. And after the show was over, he went up to the front and demanded a copy. Well, they said no, they couldn't do that because, it's a copyrighted program. They were just doing it for fun, And he said, well, I'm Robert J. Woodhead, and I own this animation in this country, and I want my copy. He got a copy.
Okay.
Nobody else did.
Yeah.
I don't fall into that same mentality. I put a lot of work into my stuff, and I want it to go as far as possible.
Right.
So I give copies to anybody at the drop of a hat. Actually, for a couple of years, I gave away hundreds of copies on videotapes that I actually collected from work for free. So I had 30-minute tapes, 45-minute tapes, 60, 90, 180, as long as tapes I had, and I had various lengths tapes, and I just made several demos, and I tossed them out to anybody that would catch them.
Where do you think those are now?
Probably in the trash.
You don't think anybody? Well, I've actually checked YouTube to see if we can find. I think periodically I find some of the old dubs.
Yeah,
and they're horrible quality, but they're there.
Oh yeah. They're still out there. YouTube has definitely carried some of those out there.
Yeah. So, if somebody's interested in getting into this, I mean, what's your first advice?
People, lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
The more people you have to throw ideas out, the easier the scripting process becomes.
Yeah.
And that was always a problem we had. We didn't have very many people, and so the number of people contributing actually was mostly me and you and Bill.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to write a 45-minute parody dub with 3 people.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also had a shortage of a particular type of person, it seemed, all the time.
Yeah, and what it eventually boiled down to is we had the hardcore fan, which was Bill.
Yeah.
We had the medium fan, which was me. And we had you as the non-fan. And basically, if the line was funny by 2 people, then the line made it in the dub.
Yeah. Unless, of course, somebody came along afterward while no one else was around and decided that line wasn't funny anymore.
Are you still griping about that? The line was not usable, okay?
Oh, yeah, okay, I understand.
It had to be saved somehow.
I understand.
I made an executive decision.
I will say that from my perspective, the most fun for me was coming up with that dialogue. So I participated, even though I have zero interest in anime. I'm not zero. I mean, I've seen anime that I enjoy, and some of it is pretty impressive. But I've never been a huge fan of anime, and I think for me, it was all about a script writing exercise. I was really enjoying the process of collaborating, and believe it or not, I took a lot out of that as I moved into my production career. I was able to use a lot of what we did. So there's a practice to that has a practical side, and I think that as an exercise in learning how to get into the world of production, it was a pretty good experience.
Yeah, well, for me, I'd rather chew broken glass than do another parody dub.
Yeah.
It does consume an enormous amount of time. We're talking about, a music video. Most of our music videos, we would spend maybe, 13 hours, and you'd have a 4.5-minute music video done. A parody dub, we're talking about, it took 13 months is not out of the question for a parody dub to be finished from start to scratch.
Yeah.
It's just for the amount of time. Plus, we have lives. We have to sleep. We have to work or go to school. We can't spend, like a professional would get paid for doing this stuff, and we're just doing it in our free time.
Right.
So, and of course, there's other problems too, like getting people together. When you live far away from me and I live far away from anybody else, the number of times you actually meet in person is,
Yeah.
maybe once a month.
How has technology changed a lot of this stuff?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's changed quite a bit actually from the days when we did our parody dub Road Busted. We were using a cheap audio mixer and a dynamic microphone, and we were using multiple VCRs to do our recording with. And this parody dub had car sound effects in it, which we had to go into cars and record.
Yeah.
And this was done like, at midnight, driving around, stop, start, hit the brakes, open the door, close the door, open the trunk, close the trunk, shift the gears. All these things had to be done and recorded just on an 8mm video deck with a, it was the Radio Shack stereo audio listener. Mm-hmm. You remember those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it plugged into the headphone jack of that and plugged into the audio input of the VCR. And now, of course, we have basically a whole studio in a little box that I'm using right now and a microphone.
Yep. Yeah.
A high-end condenser microphone, which makes our old dynamic microphones look like junk, basically.
Oh, and not to mention what we're doing right now, which is, talking to each other from a distance with perfectly clear audio. Man, what we would have done, man, we would have killed for that.
Yeah.
Because, we had so many people who were in different states and sometimes different countries.
Right. Yeah. I actually prepared audio kits to mail to people where you would use your own VCR and you would hook this kit up to it with a microphone.
Yep.
And it had a separate sound meter to show you what the level was coming out of your VCR.
Yeah.
It was, and both of those kits got lost, unfortunately. Haven't seen them ever again. Sad.
They're out there with those videotapes.
Yeah, in landfill.
The dubs, right. They're with
probably someone gave me this, but I don't know who.
They're sitting with a big stack of cartridges for the game E.T. for Atari.
Oh, yes.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's a lot. It was a lot of work, and it's not worth it in the end. I mean, there's no ROI. Like there is in the form of sort of 15 minutes of fame with a bunch of with the quote unquote unwashed masses at anime conventions. But
I mean, I can't say it's not been good for me. I mean, I had my name put on the Anime Turnpike, which is the main site people used to go to for anime purposes. Yeah. I've gotten mentioned numerous times. We had the write-up in the Houston Press.
That's right. Yeah, I remember.
Where they came out and interviewed us for our highest praise.
Yeah, that is actually, as far as I know, I think that's still floating around on the interwebs.
Yes, you can still get that online, yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah. But from there, actually, was during the time of Koko Wataku, I started writing my own, what they call a fan fiction, which basically is writing a story using existing characters from anime.
Yeah.
Which I kind of cheated because it wasn't really about anime characters. It was just characters I had basically modeled after existing characters and just put their names on them.
Well, you just used them as archetypes.
Yeah. Basically. So I just basically, and it's a very interesting little story.
That's evolving for you, right?
It is evolving into a novel, right? Now the names are no longer anime names; they're actually changed now.
Right.
But the characters are still modeled after the people in the original fan fiction.
So, as an introduction to that form of storytelling, I've got several books. That is not how I did it, but I could see how that would be very helpful. I mean, do you think that's a way for people who are interested in getting into a career in writing fiction? Do you think that would be a path they could take?
It could be, but it is limiting because you're basically stuck in a certain universe that exists only for that particular character or characters. Mm-hmm. Whereas, mine, I actually drew from 10 different anime shows, and it had nothing to do with anime.
Yeah.
They just served as this character, and it basically, a lot of it had to deal with how would this character interact with this character on a personal basis? Would they hate each other? Would they like each other?
That's interesting.
Would they want to go, rip each other's throats out because they hate each other so much?
That's very interesting, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see someone doing that with, taking characters from modern, like, television shows, like, when I say modern, I mean, the first things that pop in my head are, like, the older shows, like, Star Trek and that sort of thing, but, taking a character from, say, Lost and teaming him up with someone from,
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, from Breaking Bad, right, or something like that. Dexter,
or think
whatever.
Breaking Bad meets Lost.
What a great.
The Breaking Bad cast suddenly finds themselves on a desert island.
I'm totally writing that book now, because
But it's a
And
starting point.
and
But
the only way out is meth.
that's just the characters I'm imagining in my head look like these particular characters, and
Yeah.
there's hints to them. There's very little in the way of description in the original story because you're supposed to know who these people look like.
Yeah. Well, in a way, you're doing what a lot of writers do, and you're casting the story. Some writers actually, they'll cast their story with either just the actors or parts that the actors have played. There's another podcast, the self-publishing podcast. Those guys, they use characters all the time. They'll talk about it all the time. They use Johnny Depp's characters a lot for various things. So I think that's a cool idea.
And what helped me out a whole lot in that respect is I had extremely long drive times. 45 minutes to work and back. 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back every day. It gives you a lot of time to think about stories.
Yeah.
So
How do you? Okay, you've got this drive time, and you're thinking about stories. How do you record what you're doing? Did you make recordings? Did you write things down whenever you stopped, or how'd you? Keep
no,
track?
not really. Basically, actually, in that story, I actually started in the middle of the story and started working my way backwards. How did we get to this point? How did we get to this point? And how did we get to the point before that? And then, you start imagining, okay, well, you have a single event that evolves into a scene with these characters in it. How did we get to this point, And you keep going back and back and back and back to a beginning. And so at the time I was writing every morning before work every day, I would go to work about an hour early, get out my little Action Note 4000 with a little 8-inch monochrome screen and sit there and punch away for about an hour. And after about 3 weeks or so, I got to the point in the middle, and then I was basically stuck because I had nowhere to go from there. So I had to sit there and think, okay, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen after that,
Yeah.
And it just slowly builded itself. And I was thinking about it like every day, every night before I go to sleep. When I wasn't doing anything, I'd think about the story. How's it going to turn out? And then eventually the story basically wrote itself into a corner to which there was only one solution for it. And it was very depressing, actually. It actually had a physical response to me that I felt very unhappy for like a couple of days after that.
So it was not a happy ending.
It was not a happy ending, no.
Not a Disney story.
And it wasn't planned that way. It basically wrote itself into a corner, like a painter painting himself into a corner. So there could be only one solution for it.
That brings up, because in the publishing world, especially in the indie writing world, there's this concept of you're either a plotter or a pantser, meaning you write by the seat of your pants. What do you see yourself as?
I'm a plotter for sure.
Yeah.
I know that you're more of a seat of the pants type writer, which has to do with the Happy Pants brand name. But you like to just throw stuff out there and see what it sticks to the wall. I'm thinking like, okay, I don't think in the terms of visual images. I think in the terms of words,
Yeah.
Especially when I'm in bed at night thinking about the scene, I'm thinking about what words I'm going to type in the story, not just about what happens.
Mm-hmm. So in that vein, are your stories more? What drives your story? Is it plot? Is it setting? Is it characters?
Oh, setting is always very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to get the description out there because you can't imagine it in your head if you don't know what it looks like.
Right.
It's very difficult. You can imagine a character, they're in a building. Well, what kind of building is it? Is it a rundown building? Is it an old, Western building?
Yeah.
Is it full of spider webs? Is it full of spiders? We don't know. You got to type these things out.
So when you read stories that don't include that kind of detail, what does it bother you?
It can be frustrating because, as a writer myself, I tend to be a little more nitpicky than just some Joe Blow off the street.
Yeah. Interesting. All
Yeah.
right.
And then of course you got your characters. You don't want to sit there and itemize the characters, every little bit, but you want to at least give an idea of
Right.
what to imagine in your head.
How much detail do you go in? How much detail is enough and how much is too much?
Well, you can hint at details a little bit at a time,
Yeah.
Like if you think of Harry Potter, you knew what Harry Potter looks like: skinny kid, glasses, unkempt black hair.
Mm-hmm.
That was Harry Potter.
Yeah, but that was a pretty basic description. I mean,
Right.
you didn't get, there was no description of, I don't know, talk about eye color or anything like that with Harry Potter.
I don't remember, other than he had his mother's eyes is
Yeah.
mentioned multiple times in that.
He kept them in a little bag that hung
Yeah,
from his
that's
belt. So,
Yeah,
what
but you
about
don't
setting?
have to setting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're,
If you're talking about a creepy old house that's been abandoned for 10 years, and it's probably full of ghosts and zombies in every corner, you probably want to go in a little bit. You want to make the building a star of your story.
yeah,
That can be very important. You want to really feel like you're teleported there and you're looking around with that character, which is why I tend to make my stories in an unusual setting so that I have more time to embellish about what it looks like.
I've noticed that a lot of your stories tend to be closed settings,
Yeah.
very closed.
And, it helps the fact that the character can't just dash off to the payphone and call the cops when there's a
Yeah.
problem. It works out real well for the plot. They got to figure it out themselves.
Which is quite a feat in this day of mobile phones.
Yeah, and your cell phone could be dead. It could have a bad battery. You could be out of service. You didn't pay your bill and it got cut off. Any kind of number of problems could show up.
So, and you and I have collaborated every now and then on short fiction mostly, but
I was there when you talked about Citadel for the first time.
you were instrumental in that.
And I think my words were, "No, Kevin, you don't know what you're talking about."
That's usually everyone's words when it comes to my stuff.
No, I was like, I can see it in my head, Kevin.
Yeah.
A big soaring structure,
So the whole point of Citadel,
Yeah.
of course, was we were developing something we wanted to produce as a web series, a television series.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
So that went, and I tell people this story all the time, but the reason it shifted to a book, there were two reasons. Is one, as we developed it, I got really excited about the story, and I couldn't wait to see it. So I wrote it in prose so that I could see how it developed. I wanted to know how it turned out, because I was spending an awful lot of time writing like a treatment that was, essentially the story.
Yeah.
And all it took was to start adding a little more detail and some dialogue to that. But that was a good collaborative experience. And my brother-in-law was there, Jeremy. So the three of us kind of get the credit of developing. I brought that concept into the group, but we all developed that story, that first bit of story together. So, I'm always grateful to you guys for that.
But if you compare, and I hate to keep bringing up Harry Potter, but if you compare the Harry Potter book to the Harry Potter movie, you'll find that the movie is just basically a whirlwind treatment of the book.
Yeah.
The book goes into a lot more depth than the movie ever could.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's a necessity, though.
Yeah, and of course for attention span and budget reasons, they can't go down every little thing in the book.
Right,
But
right.
if you've watched the movies and you've never read the books, read the book. It's a little campy, yes, here and there, but on the whole, it's a engrossing tale.
Yeah, yeah. So, collaboration. We've worked on stories and we've worked on parody dubs. I mean, how do you see? What's the key to good collaboration?
I think the joke we always had was the imaginary, throw out the clay pigeon, and I say,
Yeah,
pull. And I like to shoot down people's
that was
ideas.
never annoying or anything.
No, not at all. I knew best, Kevin.
You do like to shoot down a lot of ideas, which
I did shoot down a lot of ideas that were just I did not think were A, good, or B, too whimsical. I think a lot of the things that were thrown out were just not. I don't know. I couldn't solidly get a grasp on them.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid I don't have any particular examples of that because most of that went in the trash.
What makes a good idea?
Well, part of it, of course, we talked about earlier is when we have the three collaborators, and at least two of those collaborators find it funny. That's a good line. Mm-hmm. But if only one person finds it funny, why is that? That's because it doesn't reach a broad enough audience.
Yeah.
Or it's something like you say something like some actor, a joke. I don't understand what you're talking about because I don't know anything about actors or musicians. Mm-hmm. I'm not Bill. Now, Bill may find that hysterical.
Yeah.
I won't because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So it's got to reach. It's something that reaches a lot of people.
That brings up a good point, though, is that this is all about talking to your audience.
Right. And your audience, is it a juvenile audience who's interested in more, as I said before, whimsical things? Yeah. Or is it a more, older audience who's interested in more of down-to-earth things like a good murder mystery or, a military story? Mm-hmm. Which I read one once, and I knew nothing about, military or aircraft or any of that, but I found it very interesting.
Yeah. So, what's your genre of choice?
A horror, mystery, the dark side of things. Basically, I'm not big on rainbows and unicorns.
Although you have a penchant for juvenile fiction, though. Like,
I do have a penchant for juvenile fiction because it's, it's not needlessly complex. I think a lot of it is their topics are a lot more interesting than reading about someone's romance with their pool boy or I think the adult fiction ones are a little bit too down to earth. Really, I hate to say it, but science fiction that's too sciencey, and not enough fictiony.
Yeah.
Things like that. Things that you could say, no, that's it's boring. Give me something interesting.
You and I both read a book called Five Boys in a Cave.
Ah, yes, that's a classic.
Yeah, which is a book no one's heard of, by the way. I mean, I had a tough time getting my hands on a copy. I actually own a copy now, but you loaned me yours to start. Mm-hmm. And that's a 1950s era, just wholesome sort of boys will be boys kind of fiction.
It's an adventure story. Five boys, one of them finds a cave, and they make this elaborate plan to actually explore this cave, which involved making lists, things to bring, being very careful and cautious. And it was quite a very interesting book. I was very happy with it.
Yeah.
It wasn't adult type, where it's boring, and this is all interesting stuff and about, five boys exploring a cave. And then there's problems arise, of course, there's problems to overcome.
Yeah.
But, without ruining it for anybody, everything works out okay in the end. And they even found the button.
They did find the button, yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
Buttons have become a very prominent symbol in a lot of my books somehow. I don't know why. Maybe it comes from that. Maybe it comes from Five Boys in a Cave.
Yeah, possibly.
So we veered away from parody dubs a little.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot we were talking about.
That's okay. No, I mean, we can talk about anything, really. The point is story, and I really want to hear, your story as much as stories about anime. I was just wondering if you had, what was your best memory from a showing?
Oh, well, we showed Pretty Sumi the first time. That was the best showing, and imagine the room basically the size of a 747 with an enormous screen. The screen was huge. I can't tell you how many feet the screen was, and the room was packed. They have a standing room only in the back, and people were just laughing their heads off. Even though it wasn't fully completed, it was missing some music, missing some sound effects here and there. People loved it.
Yeah.
And I was literally exhausted. I was
Mm-hmm.
so exhausted because I had worked like for 2 days straight before, got on a plane, flew up there to Baltimore to show it. And I was so tired, and I was putting this together at the very end. And I realized, oh my God, I don't know what order these scenes go into. Because all I had was scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, and they're not meant to be, shown concurrently. They're meant to hop around. And I'm like, what do I do now?
Uh,
Here it is. I've got to show this thing in literally 6 hours. And it's not put together.
and yet you pulled it together, and it was one of our best and most well-known dubs.
Yeah, it was. And I actually misspelled the title. In the initial card deal that showed that it was a work in progress, and we blamed any of our technical problems on, a wizard did it.
Yes, yeah. I remember seeing the video, and people did react. And it was funny to see the things that they reacted to, because there were...
Yeah.
And I think this probably happens to me more times than it doesn't, but the lines that just crack me up and that I think are hysterical will get a sort of meh, and then a throwaway line that was really just filler will bring the house down.
Yeah, no one will recognize me as Atch Ketchum.
which was literally just that kid pulls on that hat, and there was just a moment there where we needed a filler line, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just that was one of yours, actually.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
each one of us actually had killer lines.
I think that's the best part about that process, is that you get to see these little gems that you came up with, these nuggets of funny that a lot of people might not even have noticed. You get to see that stuff and see the reaction to it. That's pretty cool. I didn't get to go live, unfortunately, which was typical because I had jobs and things like that. But I wish I could have been there for some of that. And it was funny also that there were those lines that it was just weird, the things they would laugh at. Like we would do a semi-serious line, which was rare, but it happened. We'd have this dark turn or something, and it would just crack everybody in the audience up, and that was just bizarre. Totally unexpected. So, and then you'd show that same parody at another convention or another showing, and nobody would react to that line at all.
Yeah, and I found some of the fans to be quite interesting as well. People that have seen this stuff before. We were in a showing where we were showing Road Busted from 1997, and there was a guy sitting in front of me that was literally reciting every line in the dub.
Wow.
Every line. He knew the script better than I did.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, because I didn't even know the lines.
And so I pulled out one of my cheap demo tapes and gave it to him and says, hey, you need some new material, dude.
Yeah. Also, here's a card. Call us.
Actually, all the tapes at the beginning said, please contact us. Be in our dub,
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that there was such a following of that stuff, and then we had so few people actually want to be a part of it. Especially the female and breathing crowd.
Oh yes, that was always a challenge.
Yeah, which I also find interesting, and as the person who I will claim I'm going to claim the honor of having contributed the most female actresses to our.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe not. I actually got a group called Anime Heretics. I had quite a few girls in it that when we did Who Wants to Be an Anime Fan.
That's cheating, though.
I went to their place, and this was hours before it was due to be shown.
Yeah.
And we had them actually, a room full of people, like 30 people in this room. And I had to make everybody get quiet. Okay, I'd show them the script and say, okay, here's your line, okay? And they'd say it, and hear this in the background while people are trying to contain themselves. Yeah. And then I'd say, okay. And everybody would laugh,
And you don't,
that sort of thing.
Whereas you'll watch these behind the scenes of people doing animation projects, and you'll see 2 or 3 actors in the same soundstage, recording at the same time. You don't like that approach.
We stopped doing that after Road Busted, actually, because it resulted in too many problems, too many blown takes, basically. And we found that one person at a time worked better. And we actually had many, many scenes where there were people talking to each other in the scene who had never met in real life and never heard each other.
Yep.
It was just assumed that, hey, you're talking to this person. Act. And these people 2,000 miles apart, West Coast, East Coast, they're talking to each other.
I found that kind of fascinating too.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times actually we'd be delivering lines and we would have no feedback and no one to play off of, and we'd have to get the line right, get the right inflection and everything, and then based on having no idea how the other person was going to play with it, we did that quite a bit, and I remember Who Wants to Be an Anime Fan? There were lots of lines. You and I did that one almost exclusively by ourselves. You remember that project?
Yeah, that was a record-breaking tub because it was done in like 2 weeks flat.
Yeah. I remember us pulling all that together, and we thank God for modern technology because that made that dub possible.
That was the first all computerized dub we have ever done.
Yeah.
Everything else before that was done with the VCRs.
Yeah, I think you're right. We did in Pretty Sue Me, I know that we did a lot of we did some of our own animation in that.
That's right.
Very
yeah,
simple
Photoshop.
And very basic, but it worked. Even the
little brain pieces.
Yeah, we even made a parody of the THX logo, the original, like light shining across it, and the that thing,
Yeah, how many hours did that take?
Yeah, it took quite a while because I did that. I literally built that frame by frame, including the glint. I created the glint and moved it frame by frame and output the whole thing as I don't even know if Photoshop still does this, but at the time I just sort of discovered that Photoshop could output a video file.
Yeah.
.flv, I think, and so I built that frame by frame. And it turned out great. I mean, it looks it's the same font and everything as the original. It just says CDS.
Yeah, and we had the little brain pieces for Britney Spears, quote unquote,
which I also animated bit
by
bit.
we actually had calculations of, okay, where would this brain piece go after the explosion?
Yeah.
Where would this brain piece go? We took a very serious approach to it to make it look somewhat realistic.
Yeah. There was a lot that went into that, and there was some funny stuff that went into that. Because there were scenes like we had a character's head lopped off. We had to actually animate that bit by bit.
That's right.
There was a lot of stuff. Yeah. That was a lot of fun, I have to say. And again, it was a learning experience for me, and I carried a lot of that forward. For years I worked in film and television, and a lot of what I did branched off of that stuff. So in a way, these parody dubs helped launch my career and taught me a lot. And, we still learn, you and I, we do a lot of stuff together. Usually not very productive stuff these days, but everything we do branches from what we picked up and learned in those days. So that's very cool. It's a cool experience.
Right. And we even acted. And let me tell you, I don't like acting. I am more interested in the process of seeing the finished product than actually going through and trying to get lines correct, especially when I'm doing it by myself, which I usually am. Usually at the last minute, literally, in the middle of the night.
There's a quote, by the way, that says... and I forget the name of the author, but she says, "I hate writing, but I love having written," and that's pretty much the way these dubs went. Like the process of actually pulling that stuff together and making the dub was painful, and we hated it. But once it was done, we couldn't be more proud of it.
Yeah, and there are times actually you think it's all, especially when you look at some of the behind the scene footage that we put out,
Yeah.
you think it's all fun and games, but it's actually a lot of seriousness. And there's been times that we actually have yelled at each other,
Oh
threatened to
yeah.
hit each other,
Oh yeah.
nearly come to blows, stomped off, got huffy,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. Um,
And I wonder how many people, we drove away. Because, like you said, in the end, that was me, you, and Bill. By the time it was all said and done, it was the three of us
yeah, and
and
it,
our
it
microphones.
basically people either got fed up with the process or they grew up and had real lives.
Yeah, mostly the latter. I think.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people will put up with that sort of thing quite a bit for the fun of it when it's all done. Yeah, it's just like these 48-hour film contests that run, 2 or 3 times a year. People kill themselves to produce these crappy little, like, 3-minute films, but they keep coming back every year, and it has, I'd say probably it's probably 5%, trying to win the contest, and 95% just, they want to just be a part of making a film.
Yeah, the
And
process can be fun, but it can also be just grueling slave labor. And
yeah,
and a good example of that is when we did Road Busted, we were basing our editing on a flawed premise that the time code on the screen was going to match what was in the computer.
yeah,
And sadly, we were very, very wrong on that. We were
yeah,
actually losing frames every second. So we had to go in. I had to actually, I say we, I had to personally go in and move every line of dialogue into the right place.
you're so put upon.
And oh, hours and hours and hours. And we're
Poor
talking
Bob.
about
Poor Bob.
we're talking just literally hours before it was due to be shown.
Yeah,
I actually got no sleep for like 2 days,
yeah,
and finally at like 6:30 in the morning on the morning it was due to be shown at 10:30, I actually thought the lines were correct. Went ahead, ran off, and I still have that copy, and it's not very good because the audios are all over the place. But I had to sit there and run off the copy and adjust the levels
yeah,
to what I thought was right, and then I had to go back and listen to it to make sure it was right.
yeah.
And I got maybe an hour's worth of sleep that night, which is the most I'd had for 48 hours. And then I had to go in and add end credits, and then go in and add in a little blurb about Bill's car, which what the parody was all about,
Yeah,
and literally finished like 15 minutes before it was due to be shown.
yeah,
And it ran that down to the room, gave it to the guy, and says, "Here it is."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to ever come that close ever again.
Yeah, well, you won't. I mean,
But it always happens.
No, yeah, but we don't do those anymore.
Next time it won't be like that. Yes, it will. Every time
Every
it's
time.
down to the
Even-
last minute.
Even with the technology, it's
Yeah,
the
even with
same
technology.
thing. Yeah,
Oh, the technology makes it worse. I bet. I mean, remember the opening for Pretty Sue Me is like 45 seconds long, but it took like 2 weeks to put that together.
yeah,
All those little cutouts with Photoshop, and putting them in there and
Yeah.
animating them all up. Ugh.
There's probably an easier way.
I'm sure there is. Get
why
people to
didn't
do it
just
for
use
you on
the,
Fiverr.
why didn't you just use the Pretty Sue Me opening plugin for After Effects?
Yeah, there you go. See, new technology came
It's
out.
free.
Will it work on an Android phone?
Oh yeah, that's always the limitation. So it's an Apple-only product. All right. Well, look, we've been doing this for more than about an hour now, so it's about time I wrap this up. But man, I really appreciate you being on the show and talking about your craft here.
Yeah, actually, we got a few more minutes, Kev, because we stopped in the middle there.
Yeah, we stopped in the middle. We'd already done
For about
like
5 minutes.
We did about 20 minutes before we stopped in the middle.
Right. But then we got another 5 minutes to go, Kev. Come on, give me the 5 minutes. No, it's okay.
What would you say in 5 minutes? Well, let me ask you this. We'll wrap it up with this.
Wrap it up.
If anybody wanted to talk to you about parody dubs, either being a part of the next one we do, if we ever do another one, or getting into it as a field or a hobby or whatever, how would they get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me at my Gmail address. Probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. bbeaver1@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook or any of those other social media
They
things.
can always.
I just don't have time.
You know what? You can come talk to me on my website at kevintomlinson.com.
And Kevin will direct you to me if he
And I'll
needs.
direct you to Bob. Bob's one of my oldest friends, and we've done some insanely stupid things together. Remember that time we strapped you to a basically a giant kite and dragged you behind my truck? True story.
Life-changing, Kevin.
I need to post that video again.
Oh, please don't.
Oh no, that one's a good one. Okay, I'm gonna work on getting that one out there.
Yeah. Bob, are you okay?
That cardboard will keep you from breaking a bone.
There's so many one-liners in that thing.
That
crazy.
was classic. And
Oh my gosh.
now everybody wants to see it. Everybody listening right now wants to see it.
Yeah.
Flight of the Enterprise. So yeah. Okay. So Bob, thanks a lot for being on the show, man. And hang out after I punch the stop button here. We'll talk. Everybody can just be jealous of us.
That's right. Be jealous of our friendship.
Okay, everybody. That was Bob Beaver of CDS Productions. He is a genius when it comes to anime parody dubs. He's actually pretty world-renowned. And actually, to this day, people still try to contact you, Bob. There's Scott from the UK, right? He tries to get you to do another one.
Oh, that's Simon, actually.
Simon?
UK, yeah.
Where's
but
Scott
there's been
from?
Scott's from New Jersey.
Oh, okay. I always thought he was in England.
He's a Yankee.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then.
But it's okay. He's still cool.
Yeah, so probably not going to have another parody dub this year, but we've been talking about one. So
The Utena thing.
yeah, which I have not been a part of. Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
No,
You've
I hadn't.
been a big part of it.
How have I been okay.
We've been writing the script together.
This is news to me. You and Bill have been writing a script
No.
together.
You remember about the addiction to things she picks up off the bathroom floor? You wrote that part.
Did I?
Yes, Kevin.
Have I graduated to writing in my sleep? That seems appropriate. This must be some old work. This is work we haven't done in a while.
We were batting around a couple of years ago.
Okay, a couple of years ago. All right.
Yeah.
Oh man, the universe has changed since then. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's Bob Beaver from CDS Productions. If you would like to pass a question his way, he gave you his email address, bbeaver. What is it? bbeaver1?
bbeaver1@gmail.com.
Or you can contact me at kevintomlinson.com. Use that contact button. If you go to kevintomlinson.com/podcast, you can actually catch up with the latest podcast. You can subscribe to the RSS feed there. You can also subscribe to me on iTunes if you search for Word Slinger Podcast. So check me out online, and if you got anything you want to pass Bob's way, if you're interested in being in a parody dub or you just want to learn more about it, kevintomlinson.com and click that contact button. So thanks a lot, Bob, and hang out after the show. We'll talk for a few minutes, and the rest of you, go get some sleep. It's late. Talk to you soon. Well, that was my interview with Bob Beaver, and I hope you dug it. I had a good time making that, actually. So Bob actually gave his actual email address out there, and being as spam conscious as he is, I'm kind of surprised, but I'll run with it. So that would be actually, what was it? bbeaver1@gmail.com. So I'll put that in the show notes too. Well, maybe I won't. Maybe it'll be easier on poor Bob if I don't do that. But if you'd like to contact him and you forget the email address, you can always send him an email through my site at kevintomlinson.com. If you click on the contact button and just say, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with Bob. So I will pass you along. Might want to mention anime parody dubs or something along those lines. So I'd be happy to do that. And if you are looking to subscribe to the podcast, I love you. And you can do that on iTunes by searching for Word Slinger Podcast. Actually, I think if you just type Word Slinger, it'll bring it up. But just to be safe, put that podcast on there. You can also see me online at kevintomlinson.com/podcast. And that has the RSS feed, so you can subscribe directly to the podcast. You can also leave me a voicemail, and I'll read your question on air. Now, how's that for service? Can't guarantee all of them, but right now, no one's talking to me. But we're only on episode 3, and no one's heard any of the episodes yet, so I'll give you a little leeway there. If you want to have your question read on air, you can click the Call Me button on that site. It will call you and ask you to leave a voicemail, which it will send to me, and then I'll play it on air and answer your question as best I can, if I can. So, and I probably can, because I have Google. If you are a little shy about having your voice on air, you can always send me an email and ask your question, and I'll read that off, no problem. There's a button right there on the same page. Just click that. Everything's all set up for you. While you're on the site, why not take a look around? You've got access to my books there. I write primarily fiction. I write a lot of young adult fiction. And my latest book, Sawyer Jackson, is there available for free on the homepage if you sign up for the mailing list. So, yeah, check that out. So that's it. That's the fun stuff. Next week, unless things go completely haywire, the plan next week is to have author Andy Nolman, who wrote Pal Right Between the Eyes. And that guy is cool, man. He's funny. He's someone I've been in contact with quite a bit, and when I asked him if he would be on the show, there was no hesitation. So, great guy. I'm looking forward to talking to him, and I think you'll enjoy that interview. So tune in next week. And like I said, unless something goes epically wrong, and that sometimes happens, that's the plan. So, looking forward to episode 4. So take care of yourselves. Again, if you are interested in learning more about me and about my books and about the podcast, come check me out on kevintomlinson.com. You can subscribe to the podcast at kevintomlinson.com/podcast. And you know what, guys? I love every single one of you. Take care of yourselves and see you next week.
Word Slinger.